Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we say in Switzerland, Gutsuitnot, because this is covering all the time zones. I have decided today not to go with a video. I decided to go with a podcast because then you can listen to me, also phrases when you're driving or on the plane or whatever. So, saying that, I'm pleased to share my perspective under the title Helvetic Cybersecurity Maturity Model, a practical way to think about organizational cyber resilience. But what does this mean? I'm coming to that point in a little while. This talk was accepted for the AI in the New Era conference on the April 15th, 2026. But more importantly, the topic itself reflects a broader shift. Cybersecurity is no longer an isolated technical matter. It has become a part of leadership, governance, and strategic risk management. Some of you probably have seen me in Las Vegas recently, where I was speaking about we have to manage the risk, not to gamble with. This speech also reflects to that. What I would like to offer in the next minutes is not another tool discussion and not another compliance recticle. I want to offer a clear way of thinking on that helps executives, boards, and transformation leaders understand where they stand and what they should improve next. My perspective is shaped by Swiss precision, structured engineering, and practical transformation experience. So this is about clarity, not hype. It's about orientation, not noise. And it's about turning cybersecurity from a reactive cost center discussion into an actionable management discipline. Fresh off Las Vegas, one thing became very clear to me. Across conversations with executives, founders, and technology leaders, the same underlying question kept returning. Where do we stand, and what should we do next? That question matters because it reveals a deeper problem. Most organizations do not actually suffer from the pure cybersecurity problem. They suffer from a clarity problem. They have activity, they have spending, they have initiatives, but they do not always have a shared and reliable picture of majority. And that is a dangerous gap. When clarity is missing, boards receive noise instead of orientation. Security teams provide updates, but not always decision support. Investments are made, but not always prioritized against the business context. So right at the beginning, I want to frame the entire talk to one sentence. Most organizations do not have a cybersecurity problem. They have a clarity problem. If the audience remembers only one early statement, let it be this one. Let us be honest. Most organizations are not starting from zero. They already have controls, policies, vendors, dashboards, audits, and often well-known frameworks such as ISO 27001, NIST, or CIS. These frameworks are useful and important. They create structure. They define expectations. They support compliance and consistency. But they do not always answer the executive question that matters most in practice. How good are we really? And what should we prioritize next? That is why many organizations become extremely active, yet not necessarily well-directed. They measure, control existence, but not always real effectiveness. They discuss their posture, but not always maturity. They show dashboards, but not always decision logic. This is the point where I introduce one of the strongest lines of the talk. Many organizations are over-controlled, but under-direct. In other words, they have many mechanisms in place, but still lack in clarity on sequencing, prioritizing, accountability, and business alignment. Next steps. This sentence is important because it gives the audience language for a frustration they often already feel. It also creates the bridge into the HCMM model, which is not meant to replace frameworks, but to make them more actionable from the executive perspective. This is exactly where the Helvetic Cybersecurity Maturity Model comes in. HCMM is not another framework for the sake of framework expansion. It's a way to translate technical complexity into executive clarity. I usually simplify maturity with one sentence. Maturity is not the number of controls you have. It is your ability to make the right decisions under uncertainty. That statement changes the conversation immediately because it moves the focus away from quantity and towards decision readiness. The model is built across 3 levels. At the bottom, it's the operational level. Tools, controls, technical mechanisms, and the day-to-day security apparatus. This is where most operations invest first and often most heavily. Above this sits a structural level: governance, processes, ownership, accountability, escalation paths, and organizational consistency. This is where the technical capability either becomes sustainable or starts to fragment. At the top sits the strategic level: decision-making, prioritization, and risk alignment. This is where real majority becomes visible to leadership. Because at that level, an organization no longer just has security measures. It has the capacity to position itself, explain trade-offs, and improve with intent. One very useful way to speak this side aloud is: most organizations invest heavily in the bottom, struggle in the middle, and lack clarity on top. That line helps the audience instantly to understand why expensive security environments still can feel immature. Let me make this practical. Imagine an organization that sincerely believes it is mature in cybersecurity. It has invested in over a dozen tools. It runs multiple dashboards. It has fragmented but sustainable security capabilities across the enterprise. On paper, this can look impressive. Procurement has been active. Projects have been approved. Monitoring exists. Identity mechanisms exist. Incident handling may exist. And this often creates internal narrative that the organization must already be fairly mature. But once we step back and perform a reality check, a different picture often emerges. We find gaps between controls and actual coverage. We discover dependencies between teams, vendors, or systems that were never properly aligned. And we see unclear priorities when nobody can confidentially say what should be fixed first and why. At that point, maturity becomes a positioning exercise rather than a value exercise. The real question is not, how much have we bought? The real question is, are we truly at level 4 or are we? Reality lies closer to 2.5. This example is powerful because it is familiar. You all know. Many executives have seen exactly that pattern. Spending without sequences controls awareness, without coherence and confidence. That turns out to be overstated. One's maturity is assessed through a structured lens. If the audience takes away 3 things from this session, I would frame them exactly like this. First, cybersecurity is a leadership discipline. It's no longer enough to treat it as a technical support topic somewhere below the strategic horizon. The moment cyber risk influences resilience, trust, continuity, and investment, it becomes a leadership topic. Second, majority creates clarity. A majority model is valuable not because it produces elegant graphics, but because it creates an understandable basis for discussion. It gives leadership a language for improvement, sequencing, and accountability. Third, clarity drives investment decisions. When majority is visible, investments become more intelligent. Budgets can be targeted. Trade-offs can be justified. Roadmaps become realistic rather than symbolic. I then close this page with a line of shown off the slide. You cannot manage what you cannot position. That is the conceptual summary of the entire talk. Once an organization can position itself honestly, it can improve, deliberates. Think about. Let me close with a simple thought. Cybersecurity is often treated as a race. More tools, more controls, more alerts, more spending. But in reality, it is not primarily about the speed. It's about the direction. Organizations do not need perfection before they can act. But they do need enough clarity to know where they stand, what truly matters, and what should come next. That is the practical value of maturity thinking. So if this perspective resonates with you, I would be very happy to continue the conversation. You can reach me directly on LinkedIn, and I immediately will respond. And I'll leave the audience with the line, that best reflects the spirit of the talk, turning complexity into clarity. Thank you.